Good evening, everyone. It is Monday, Tuesday, October 10th. It is 7:01 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the following town council members are present in chambers: Jason Mauer, Tina Capellis, Jonathan Plumacella, Sean O'Rourke, Carrie Rooney, Godwin Wales. The following town council members are here remotely: Jessica Duska and Kevin Reed. The following town council member is absent currently, Dee Dee Martin. If there's no objection, I'm going to pass the consent calendar as presented. Hearing no objection, I'm passing the consent calendar. I ask that communication items A through I be incorporated into the minutes of our meeting. Item 5, public participation. Is there any member of the public that is here in town council chambers that would like to participate? Please come, name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve Kirsch, 35 Applegate Lane. For the record, I'm a member of the Board of Finance. However, my comments tonight are solely my own. I don't represent the board or any other member. I'd like to address the resolutions that are on your agenda tonight. And I'll start with the ones that I have no issues with at all. Resolution 23-118 for the schools and 23-119 for the purchase of the equipment. Regarding resolution 23-117 for roads, it had $1 million. As most of you know, I projects have always have and will continue to do so. My only comment is we need to be spending more money. Spending is not sufficient. Reports that we've seen in the last several cycles have said we should be spending more overall on roads, number one. And number two, we've learned that part of our expenditures for roads are for the storm drains, which of course are needed as predecessors to doing the roads. But that means we're literally doing less asphalt, or some of the money is going to that part of the project. So again, I'd like to see more money going into bonding or from other sources for the roads. The last thing I'd like to address is resolution 23-120, the purchase of real estate. I actually think it's premature to bring this forward tonight in the means forward to a town meeting in less than 2 weeks. I know that you all have worked on this for a long time. You have many executive sessions. You know all the details. You've had a lot of chance to ask questions. The public has not. And even as an elected official, when I had asked for maybe the Board of Finance getting a briefing, I was told it was inappropriate. And so the first time we really had any conversation about it, the Board of Finance, was last week when we talked about how we might want to fund it. I'm in complete agreement with the method of funding, taking it from the general fund as opposed to bonding. But I still think that I have very little information about what the scope of the plan is. Yes, I know it's going to be in phases, maybe 5 to 10 years. I've seen no plans. I've seen no real documentation. I haven't had a chance to walk the property or the building. And I think what would be better would be a meeting, an informational meeting for the public, just to talk about what the plans are, to share documentation, to give the public a chance to review it. Then let's go through the process of seeking approval and a meeting for the financing. That's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public that is here in person that would like to participate during public participation? Okay. Now trying online, is there any member? I don't think there's going to be anybody, but is there any member of the public that would like to participate that's here through their phone or computer? Please remember to unmute yourself. If you're on the phone, it's *6 to unmute yourself. Otherwise, tap the microphone. Hearing none, seeing none, I'm going to close public participation. We have no appointments this evening. Action items number 7. All right, item A, Town Council Committee on Finance, Education, Health, Public Safety Matters. Madam Vice Chair.
We have not met since our last meeting, so no.
Thank you. Town Council Committee on Planning, Zoning, Public Works, and Park and Recreation Matters. Council Member Rooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have not met, but we do have a meeting tomorrow night.
Thank you very much. Item C, Town Council Command on Legislative and Administrative Matters. Councilmember Reed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We did have a meeting tonight. We had just met previously, right before council, and we met on 5 different resolutions, 116 through 120 consecutively. First being the Equitable Sharing Agreement and Certification. These are the documents between the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of Treasury for the purposes of asset forfeiture and equitable sharing. We've seen this before. Be a quick conversation, I am sure, but let's see where that goes. The second was an appropriation of $1.020 million for road construction. Another one is 118 regarding the authorization and appropriation $900,000 for various school facility improvements. And this is authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $900,000. 119 is regarding authorization and appropriation of $1.030 million for the purchase of some trucks. Mr. Kellogg, I'm sure, will bring us through that. And then 120 is regarding authorization of the purchase of the real estate for town purposes, special appropriation of $3 million from unassigned fund balance. This is for phase 1 and phase 2 facility renovations for a community center project. And I believe 121 is in front of us for the actual call of the town meeting. And that's what we talked about tonight. All reached resolution to and consensus to come to council.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Mauer.
Just to correct the record, 23116 was actually passed as part of our consent calendar already tonight, so there would not be any further discussion on it, and it has already been passed.
Thank you, Mr. Mauer.
Yeah, sorry, that one was resolved. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Right. Item D, Strategic Planning Committee. We have not met since our last town council meeting. We are endeavoring to get dates together. We are working with the Office of the First Selectman and getting those dates together to have all the interested parties available. But when you try to get a lot of people together, sometimes dates are come by, but we are trying to get a date together. All right. Item E, EMS Building Committee, Councilmember Rooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing to report. We're still waiting on the architect's final bill so we can complete this. But other than that, everything is done, all set, operational, working beautifully. So that's it. We're just waiting for the architect's final blessing and we can move forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Item F, Open Space Preservation and Acquisition Committee. Councilmember O'Rourke.
Mr. Chairman, we have not met since our last meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Rourke. And finally, item G, the First Selectman's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one item I want to mention. You may have read about this in the media, but the town did get awarded a $500,000 STEEP grant. This is for improvements to our animal shelter. It's funded through the Small Town Economic Assistance Program, or STEEP, that funds capital projects in certain municipalities. It was a project that was in our prior capital plan. I'm sure you recall it. It involves renovation of the facility, new doors, windows, roof, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, security, and also a small addition to the structure as well, primarily for better service and reception area. The design and evaluation have been completed. State funding will cover about 60% of the estimated construction costs, with the remainder already appropriated in a prior budget cycle and will not require any bonding to move forward. I want to thank a lot of staff that were involved in putting together the application, especially Bill Holsworth, who kind of coordinated compiling everything and putting it together. So much needed. This is a facility that has not been upgraded in decades, and it is desperately needed and will bring us fully up to standard with code and Department of Agriculture, the current standards for the Department of Agriculture for shelters. So very happy about that. And the other update I'm going to do right now is just to give you an overview of items that are on your agenda further. Before we get into the specific resolutions, just some background information. on all of them. So as everyone knows, the capital budget for this fiscal year was included in the annual budget referendum, which passed in May. Certain projects are ready. I recommended their approval. In addition to items that were on the capital budget, there are a couple of items that have been discussed with Town Council and Board of Finance that are in addition to that approved budget. One is the community center project, which is on tonight's agenda. And we'll be discussing it in much greater detail when we get to that resolution on the agenda. I want to just mention this item, the second item, the open space non-binding owner intent that we discussed in the last meeting, was passed last meeting for the Village property. That is not on tonight's agenda. That is for future consideration, likely not until next fiscal year. That, as you will recall, was a letter of intent primarily to get a grant application submitted, and that entire transaction is contingent on the success of that grant, which we will not know for some time. So that is not for tonight. That is for future discussions and future budgetary evaluation. So as you know, there's a couple funding sources in consideration for tonight. Bonding, which you know requires approval or recommendation from myself, council, Board of Finance, and then voted at town meeting. There are a couple of bonding resolutions where costs have been updated on certain projects, so we've amended those numbers, and they are right here. First, the budget passed referendum had bonded projects that were $5.8 million. And actually, you know what, excuse me, one second, I'm just gonna, I can do that. That would be funded through bonding. The projects we propose tonight are in those three categories, and you have those in front of you for consideration: road construction, school facility improvements, and public works trucks and equipment, which total just under $3 million. Everyone knows that this council, that issuance of municipal bonds is a common source of capital for projects with larger lifespans. Our bonded debt has decreased significantly since 2015. In fact, the state of Connecticut reports that our bonded debt per capita is roughly half the state average. We ranked 111th in the last report of 169. It's one ranking where you want to be low. The lower, the better. And just to give you the overview, as you can see, even with all of the bonding being considered this evening, which if you add that to the bond resolutions previously approved in prior authorizations, you got a grand total of $5.9 million. These are the ones we're talking about tonight. These are bonding that was approved in a prior cycle, but we haven't actually issued the bonds yet. That's why it's not showing up as outstanding debt. So that number ends up here for fiscal year 24. We have about $5 million in debt that is rolling off, gets us to 26. And again, Ron, with Ron's help, we've made some assumptions here in terms of what might occur in fiscal year 25. That's just based upon the capital plan, and of course the reduction based on what's rolling off. As you can see, our 5-year rolling average of outstanding debt continues to decline, which is good news. It indicates that we have a healthy ability to take on debt as we need to as we move these projects forward. And I just wanted to demonstrate that what we're considering tonight is certainly not anything. It's certainly something that we can absorb and will not be a major burden to debt service. The other funding source being considered for tonight is the unassigned fund balance in our general fund. Similarly, the town charter requires any special appropriation over $150,000 to be recommended by the first selectman, the town council, and Board of Finance, and then be voted on at a town meeting. That same approval is required for any purchase of real estate for town purposes. In our fund balance, we've worked diligently over the last several years to increase what many people refer to as the rainy day fund. We've been working to get it back up to Board of Finance policy levels. You see that we've not only done that, we've gone over the roof at this point. A healthy fund balance is very important for obvious reasons to manage crises. but it's also a very important factor in our AAA bond rating, which lowers our debt service costs. Why is our fund balance high? Well, we've increased it through management of operating expenses over the years. In almost every year, we've managed budgets such that we've come under budget in many departments by finding better ways of doing things in many cases. We've increased revenue surplus from a greater investment income that was budgeted. There's been just, on one hand, just very good investment policy by both our former town treasurer and our current one, who's here with us tonight, Mr. Duchess. But we've also had a couple cycles where we purposely budgeted low on investment income because of things like the pandemic, and then things turned around in the market, and we did better than anticipated. Prior year's tax collection rates have been higher than budgeted in many cases, and we've had use of grant funds that were not originally contemplated in the operating budget, ARPA being the one in the first year of ARPA that was most obvious. Our projected fund balance as of the beginning of this fiscal year is just over $23 million. Again, it's the highest on record. Not included in that $23 million is there are several committed fund balances, but there are two that are worth mentioning. $1 million is already set aside in a special fund for unforeseen and unpredictable special education costs, something that we've done in partnership with the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance to make sure that there's a safety net for those costs, because as we know, things can happen during the year that are completely unforeseen, such as new residents coming in with IEPs already placed. Those costs immediately have to be assumed by the Board of Ed. There's absolutely no control they have over it. So to make the budgeting process smoother and to not have Board of Ed forced to budget for things that, to have them budget contingency every year, we've set aside this fund. We started at $500,000, it's now at $1 million, so that they can have a little bit of relief in those budgetary pressures. So that's already sitting out there. There's $500,000 already set aside in the special fund for any disasters, something we did during COVID. It's still there, so whether it's a pandemic or something else, the town has ready access to funds to deal with those outside of the operating budget. So the point here is that not only do we have a healthy rainy day fund, there are things that you might consider rainy day expenses that we already have covered as well in committed funds. So where does that put us? Again, let me just give you some, you're probably familiar with this slide from budget presentations, but the bars are where our fund balance is in terms of dollars and percentages. The percentage is a function of our fund balance versus the total expenditures in the budget. The Board of Finance policy is that we should have a minimum of 1 month's or 8.3% available, and a maximum of 2 months or 16.67%, with the target being right in the middle of 1.5 months. So obviously, as our budget every year goes up, those numbers change. So we want to be in this green zone. You can see last fiscal year, we really busted out of it. We are right here is where we expect to be. Once these are fully audited at 23 million. And then this includes, if we utilize the $3 million out of the fund balance that we are contemplating this evening, we will still be at around 20 million, and we'll be above that threshold. So there's capacity to have more consideration for use of fund balance for either other things that we may want to discuss in the future or availability for future budget operating relief, especially as we know there are grants that are rolling off in future budget years. Kind of phase that out. So the funding sources for consideration, again, I just mentioned this, the upper limit is 2 months, we exceeded that. We had a meeting with Board of Finance, which indicated their willingness to utilize $3 million towards this project. Again, I will go into more details of the project when it is time on your agenda. And that is That's the summary kind of leading up to our resolutions tonight. So 3 for bonding and 1 special appropriation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just ask that 10 council members, if you have a specific question under one of the, our resolutions tonight, just to hold off until we hit that resolution. Okay, there's nothing else. Thank you, Mr. First Selectman. We have no unfinished business tonight. All right, item A, resolution 23-117. I move that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, would you mind if I go back for
Go
30
right
seconds?
ahead. Go right.
I meant to bring this up at the beginning of my report and I forgot. One of the items that you approved in the consent calendar was our donations, which, we get those regularly. It's a fairly routine matter. I just wanted to highlight one thing that included in the donations that you approved tonight was a donation to our emergency medical service. And I just felt it important to read a message that came along with that donation. And I'm just going to read it. Several years ago, I had a medical emergency on a United Airlines flight to Phoenix, Arizona. Craig Rosenberg, for those of you who know, our current EMS chief, came to my aid. Thank you, Craig. I've never forgotten your kindness and your willingness to step in and take charge of the situation. She donated $500 to EMS as a result. I wanted to recognize Craig for that. It was a pretty great story. Thank you.
Well said by that individual, and thank you, Mr. First Selectman, for sharing this with us. Our EMS and fire volunteers are incredible people, and willing to do anything to help their community or even a stranger in this case. New business item A. I move that the town council adopt resolution 23-117 resolved that the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing Appropriation of $1,020,000 for road construction and reconstruction Phase 10 project and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,020,000 to finance the appropriation, a copy of which is available at this meeting and was included in the package materials, is hereby approved and recommended for adoption by the town. And I move that the town council waive the reading of said resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so motion by me, second by Mr. Mauer. Mr. First Selectman.
Thank you. So the first resolution tonight for road construction reconstruction, this is Phase 10, meaning simply the 10th iteration of a similar resolution in our long-term plan to continue and add to the investment of our road infrastructure and to maintain our improve our pavement condition index. This $1 million is in addition to the $1.5 million that is currently budgeted in operating, and grant funds for roads, bringing a total of $2.5 million for roads, which is, again, where we've kind of, based on the last study, decided that we should be every year. Adding the allowance of bond issuance costs, that brings you to the $1.02 million.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting resolution 23-117, please say aye.
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 All those against, please say nay. Hearing no nays, this resolution passes 8-0. I move the town council adopt resolution 23-118, resolve that the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing Appropriation of $900,000 for various facility improvements and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $900,000 to finance the appropriation. A copy of which is available at this meeting and was included in the packet of the meeting materials. Hereby approved and recommended for adoption by the town. Additionally, I move that the waive the reading of said resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Power. Mr. First Selectman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So included in the capital budget is a collection of school facility improvements. The ones here are the ones that the board of, or I should say the superintendent has asked that we move forward at this time. It includes upgrades to doors and crash bars at Jockey Hollow, paving of the front driveway and parking lot at Fawn Hollow, as well as replacing exterior doors there. A new drop ceiling and hallway lighting at Stepney Elementary, and replacing kitchen floor tiles. Again, when you add in the bond issuance cost, that is where we get to the $900,000 total.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Councilmember Mauer.
One question actually deals with kind of everything. I just want to make sure, I just realized that I might have to ask this now rather than wait for the specific one. There's no time requirement that we have to call the public meeting within after passing these, correct?
I do not believe so.
Okay. So if we were to desire to push the public meeting back past the 2 weeks, it doesn't matter that we pass these on this calendar.
Correct.
Okay. That's my only question for this one. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion on resolution 23-118? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those against, please say nay. Hearing no nays, this passes 8-0. I move that the town council adopt resolution 23-119, resolved that the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing Appropriation of $1,030,000 for the purchase of trucks and equipment for the Department of Public Works and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,030,000 to finance that appropriation. A copy of which is available at this meeting and was included in the packet of the meeting materials, is hereby approved and recommended for adoption by the town. Additionally, I move to waive the reading of said resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Donald Lynn. Second. Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you. So again, these are items in the capital budget. Our rolling truck replacement plan, these are the dump trucks that serve lots of purposes, including plowing. That is a slight increase based on new cost numbers from Public Works, $600,000. Other vehicles and equipment that were included, another replacement F-550 truck with plow and spreader, a loader, and a Ford Explorer. Again, if you add in the bond issuance costs, that brings you to 1.03 million.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting resolution 23-119, please say aye.
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 I love trucks, so aye.
All those against, please say nay. Hearing no nays, this passes 8-0. I move that the town council adopt resolution number 23-120, resolve that the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing the Purchase of Real Estate for Town Purposes and Special Appropriation of $3 million from unassigned fund balance for the purpose of acquisition of real estate and for Phase 1 and Phase 2 facility renovations for a community center project, a copy of which is available at this meeting, was included in the packet of our meeting materials, is hereby approved and recommended for the town, for adoption by the town. Additionally, I move to waive the reading of said resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mauer. Mr. First Selectman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go back to the podium for this. I have copies if anyone would like. Help yourself. Steve. Okay, so community center project. So as the council is aware, an MOU was authorized by the town council in 2022, which memorialized our intent to purchase the former St. Jude School for a cost not to exceed $2.3 million. As you know, we've had subsequent negotiations and agreement to a purchase price of just over 1.775. That is to account for certain deferred maintenance items that the town could address upon closing. That agreement is contingent upon all required municipal approvals, including the approval at this and other meetings. So why St. Jude? So we had a municipal space needs assessment conducted by Carnarlo and Dahl. I know the council did see a copy of that last year. The relevant sections of that we talked about. DeCarlo and Dahl concluded that the historical community use at St. Jude is space that's compatible with these functions. It is a practical size for the community center at about 32,000 square feet. It's got a ability for a future migration of municipal offices, which was in line with the overall municipal space needs assessment of their long-term strategic plan to free up space in town hall. And being adjacent to town hall was a rare opportunity to substantially add to the town hall campus. In that line, in that frame, they, I must have left my pointer up here. This was a conceptual rendering that DeCarlo and Dahl did. This is by no means, don't take this as a, this is not a final plan or anything. This is simply a concept, a rendering to show that how you could, with town hall and library, how you could basically connect driveways and parking lots, and you could also extend sidewalks all the way to the parcel. Why not Chalk Hill? Well, the same study noted that, which we all know, is that Chalk Hill is almost 3 times the size of St. Jude at about 95,000 square feet. With that comes significantly higher operating costs. It also is simply a lot of space to fill and to find a variety, whether it's one use or multiple uses, to find everything to come together to justify that operational cost. Most importantly, the Board of Education went on record that they had security concerns regarding municipal use on the school campus. Not that we couldn't do it, but there would be significant limitations. So again, the ability to fully utilize it was going to be very challenging. And the estimated renovation costs in 2021, so this number's probably gone up since then, but for the estimated renovation cost that DeCarlo and Dahl put on it was $10.8 million. That was just the feasibility number. Again, likely higher now in 2024 dollars. Furthermore, the Board of Education in the 2023 capital budget asked for a facility study, which we are, I know we actually, Board of Finance did a transfer so we can get that, they'll be part of some of the transfers that were done so we can get that going sooner rather than later. In that study, they've asked to include the Chalk Hill location and the building included in that evaluation. And that's primarily to address the increased enrollment pressures. So for a lot of reasons, St. Jude is it's a smaller building, it's right size, and it's in the right location for what we want to do. So again, what is our agreement with St. Jude? Purchase price, we talked about, it's 6.2 acres that encompasses the former school in the parking lot and the current overflow lot, and it's 1.4 acres that will be included, but solely for the existing septic system, and then will be reconveyed at a future date. The reason is simply, where the septic system is not a piece of land that we want. However, it is where I'll show you on a future slide where the septic system is, and the state health department will not allow any property owner to basically not own the parcel that septic is on. So we need to own that parcel while we're using that septic system. And here's what we're talking about. So you can kind of see the lines here. Just to orient everyone, this is Town Hall where we are right now. This is the library. So this is the entire parcel that is currently St. Jude. This is where the former school is located, and that is what parcel would become the community center parcel. This extension here is where the septic system is currently for that parcel. That is included in the purchase, but it would be reconveyed back to St. Jude at a future date, and I'll discuss that. The balance of the property, which includes obviously the church and the rectory, would remain St. Jude. Again, our agreement with St. Jude is contingent on all the municipal approvals. In addition to standard real estate transaction terms, that for the agreement is supposed to take between 120 and 180 days. So there are a lot of other municipal approvals that are required as well that we want to get moving on expeditiously. And then the agreement calls for a closing 30 days from those municipal approvals. So part of that agreement is that St. Jude will have limited continued use of up to 8 classrooms on the second floor, up to 10 hours per week. This is so they can continue their religious education classes. And that will continue until one of the following happens. Either the town relocates the septic system and reconveys that septic lot. And we have already located an area on the parcel that we would retain that has been, testing has been done that says that can accommodate a septic system. You simply don't want to necessarily spend those dollars day one. Or 10 years from closing, subject to an extension, or 120 days after the town provides notice to St. Jude to relocate to a facility in town within 3 miles. So the town really has the ability, even if it were simply relocating, finding them space in another town building, to do this in a relatively short period of time, if we so desire, if it made sense. Obviously, the town wouldn't do that unless there was a compelling reason. But if we had one, we have that ability. While St. Jude is utilizing space, they pay for the pro rata operating and maintenance costs. And then on an ongoing basis, they will have non-exclusive rights during specific hours on Saturday evenings and Sundays to utilize the parking lot. That's the reason is probably obvious, but they need that while they have services going on. So how would we do this? So the implementation would be in phases. Phase 1, which would be, we could begin upon closing, is the town utilizing the first floor at St. Jude with their limited use on the second floor. There are limited renovations, which are structural and fire code related, that we would do immediately, plus the costs for the subdivision and the land use approvals. That would allow adult and children's programming to be conducted, as well as municipal use in the gymnasium. And it would allow for Parks and Rec offices and children's programming, meaning up to grade 12 on the first floor classrooms. And those limitations are code driven. Phase 2, which is still short term, but at the town's discretion, we could do it at the same time as phase 1, immediately after phase 1. But again, I would say it's in the short term. The use would be the same, town versus St. Jude, but there would be additional code renovations done to allow Parks and Rec programming in the classrooms to include adult programming. And it would allow for other functions in the classrooms on the first floor, could be community services, senior center programming, et cetera. So for example, if the senior center wanted to do a yoga class, they want to do it here as opposed to the senior center, we could provide that. If community services had a program that they wanted to operate, they could do that in the classrooms as opposed to somewhere else. Phase 3 is long-term, and that would be for a future funding authorization. That is not what we're talking about tonight. That would be when St. Jude was no longer utilizing the facility, so it would be exclusively town use. In this phase, we would renovate the second floor and move Parks and Recreation programming to the second floor, renovate the first floor to allow for municipal offices. One of the examples that was in the space use assessment was permitting functions. Could be utilized, could be done potentially. This would be one potential use on the first floor, as well as other municipal offices that could continue to be on the first floor. You might be wondering, well, why move Parks and Rec programming to the second floor if they're already in the first floor? The reason is simple. Offices have a different standard for the floor, or in the case of the second floor, the ceiling, because there's going to be desks and file cabinets, and so it has to withstand a greater weight if they are offices versus programming, which is kind of what's happening there now already as a school, which does not require that. So it is a more cost-effective method to move the uses as that and keep the renovation costs down. Phase 3 also includes a lot of mechanical and utility upgrades. We all know this, that a lot of those mechanicals are at or near end of life, and those will need to be replaced and upgraded. We would install an elevator because the code would kick in requiring an elevator, replacing windows and building overlay parking lot, things like that. The phase 3 long-term, again, this is for future authorization, was estimated at $3.7 million. Now, that said, again, we're talking future, so there's future budget cycles to think that through. I also strongly believe that there are great grant opportunities and a potential to seek state aid, particularly in state bonding, to offset those costs, particularly if the town can demonstrate our commitment to invest in the first $3 million. The total project design and construction costs, if you add those all up, are less than building the design engineering estimate to build a new construction of the same size was $12.9 to $16.1 million. So the long-term renovation makes sense financially. As far as ongoing operating costs of the facility, we're currently estimating at between $100,000 and $125,000 annually as it sits. That is based on St. Jude's actuals from prior year's operations that have been escalated year over year to 2024. The estimated incremental revenue, however, that Parks and Rec has already gone through and done some analysis. So first, Parks and Rec would do both free and fee-based programming. So part of the community center, not everything needs to be paid, but they would be able to significantly increase their fee-based programs as well. And projecting full utilization of the first floor and the gymnasium resulted in about $225,000 in net program revenue. That includes, additional costs for potentially part-time program coordinators and things like that. By doing so many more programs, they still would have a healthy net revenue in that. So what that means is there would be projected a net operating surplus of the facility that could fund either additional free programming, it could fund other free events that we do for the town. This is the same fund that we use to pay for concerts at the park and things that we don't charge residents for, or it can be put towards future facility improvements as well. So another source of. So the proposed resolution it accomplishes two things: the purchase of real estate for town purposes and a special appropriation from unassigned fund balance for that purchase and for the phase 1 and 2 renovations. You all know the purchase price. The phase 1 renovations are estimated at just over $842,000. Phase 2 at $367,000. Both phase 1 and phase 2 do have standard construction contingencies in there. However, we've added an additional contingency of $14,520 to bring it to a round number of $3 million. And that is an update. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. First Selectman. I will note that on the discussion of Chalk Hill, this past summer, SBC had a meeting where council members Wales, Martin, and myself discussed about the scope of the Board of Education facility studies. Chairman Ferris of the Board of Education was gracious enough to include us, as well as Superintendent of Schools, Joe Cobza. So we really appreciated that collaboration and trying to get as many ideas on the table on what's best for the town and for our schools. As for St. Jude in general and the purchase, it's a long time coming. It's years of negotiation, planning.
It's been many years. This negotiation started with both parties interested. There was a period of time where there was some question as to the diocese wanting to pursue it or not, having nothing to do with the town, just their own strategic thinking. But obviously we resumed that after a hiatus, and again, it was I think over a year ago that we entered that MOU to proceed down this path. And I actually get questions quite frequently from residents saying, what's taking so long in St. Jude? So I'm glad we're finally at this point.
And Mr. First Selectman, your presentation will be available on our town's website.
Yes, it may not be up, it will be up. It would definitely be up. It'll be added to the town council packet as an additional attachment.
Thank you. And
I have copies here for anyone who wants to take.
And did you plan on having or giving similar information at our town expected town meeting?
I would expect this exact presentation. I typically will provide the same presentation in all three meetings and simply update it as, if there's any updates provided. But it's typically, when we do bonding authorizations, I provide this to Board of Finance and at the town meeting. So I would do the same thing.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Councilmember Mauer.
Thank you, Mr. Formicella. And I appreciate the questions that you just asked, as they touched upon a lot of what I wanted to ask. In my experience, when there's one member of the community who has a question and wants more information, that means there's lots of others who feel the same way. Based off of this presentation being available and it being after this meeting, I would still recommend one of two paths, either of which I think would be fitting. One is to simply create two meetings, two public meetings next week before the council meeting. One being purely an informational question and answer session. And then second being the actual voting meeting on the resolutions, and that would give a chance for people to come and really feel welcome in asking questions in a less formal proceeding. The other would be to do a public meeting for informational purposes in the 2 weeks' time, and then either do the bonding resolutions at that next meeting, or you push all resolutions together back to the following meeting. I think either one of those would be acceptable, and I think either one of those would be a good idea. And just allow for, like I said, a less formal setting for townspeople to be able to come ask questions specifically on this presentation before feeling like we're getting into a vote aspect of it. I think it could be the same night and accomplish both in the same night, but I think one of those two would be beneficial to the townspeople and to our citizens.
Thank you. Just briefly to respond, I don't think that's a bad idea or anything, and to have a little bit of time before the town meeting if someone has a question. I think that probably makes the schedule probably the best. I won't be calling a town meeting before the town meeting, but I wonder if the first selectman could provide some time maybe before the meeting.
Well, I mean, typically the first part of it, I mean, I appreciate your comments that it's somewhat a more formal setting, but generally, I mean, there have not historically been a lot of interaction in those meetings, fairly straightforward, but nothing precludes those meetings from having a healthy dialogue at that same meeting. I know that has happened in the past, not in recent memory, but that has happened. I just think it might be more expeditious to try and, rather than asking people to come out twice, to have them come out on one evening, even if you wanted to call the meeting at an earlier time, if you think more time is necessary, but it's your decision.
We're only having one town meeting. Well, before we talk about this, why don't we vote on this if this goes to a town meeting first? All right, if there's any other discussion on 120, hearing none, all those in favor of adopting resolution 23-120, please say aye.
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 Kevin, unmute yourself. Kevin.
Did it not come? Sorry, I apologies. I thought I pressed up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, passes 8-0. And finally, our last item on the agenda. Again, we'll talk about what we just spoke about, but I'll introduce the resolution first. I move that the town council adopt the following resolution, resolution 23-121. Resolved that pursuant to Chapter 9, Section 1 of the Charter of the Town of Monroe, and contingent upon Board of Finance approval, Town Council hereby calls a town meeting to be warned and held on October 23rd, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the Monroe Town Council chambers of the Monroe Town Hall to consider and act upon each of the following entitled resolutions individually, and that the town clerk cause notice of such meeting to be posted and published in accordance with law. Number 1, resolution authorizing an appropriation of $1,020,000 for a road construction and reconstruction Phase 10 project, and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in amount not to exceed $1,020,000 to finance the appropriation. Number 2, resolution authorizing an appropriation of $900,000 for various school facility improvements and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $900,000 to finance the appropriation. Number 3, resolution authorizing an appropriation of $1,030,000 for the purchase of trucks and equipment for the Department of Public Works and authorizing the issuance of town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,030,000 to finance the appropriation. Number 4, resolution authorizing the purchase of real estate for town purposes and a special appropriation of $3 million from unassigned fund balance for the purpose of acquisition of real estate and for Phase 1 and Phase 2 facility renovations for a community center project. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair LaPellis. Mr. Kellogg, anything additional you'd like to say?
No, obviously, the charter we need to properly warn town meeting, and this accomplishes that.
Like I said in previous discussion of the specific bonding resolutions, I think it's appropriate to have this meeting on October 23rd as for information that people need to decide whether or not these are appropriate bonding resolutions and or the use of unassigned fund balance. We have our capital planning, which was passed in the budget for the first 3 items, as well as we have the first selectman's presentation on all 4 items, including number 4, which is purchase of St. Jude property, which has been under negotiations for a purchase for well over a year now, and planning for that purpose for well over a year now. What I would say is that there's an opportunity at these town meetings. I suspect I know the person who's going to chair the town meeting, and there will be plenty of time for questions. I'm sure the first selectman will be here to answer any questions that he has about how the different phases might work, as well as the general amount of money that's going to be used in these for that specific project of the purchase of St. Jude property, as well as the normal bonding resolutions, which we do each year. All right. Any further discussion? Councilmember Bauer.
Thank you. I think I think the time is sufficient at 6. And I think I have a way to mold this ever so slightly to accomplish my goals here, if council will indulge me in a motion
So
to amend.
why don't you just talk about it?
Sure. All I want to add is after town council of the Monroe Town Hall, instead of to consider an act, for it to say to present, discuss, and consider an act, just to make it clear that the meeting is, consider an act is an act of voting. And I think it is important for the public to recognize that this is their chance to hear the presentation of this, as well as to discuss it as well. I think it's a 2-word addition, and I think it accomplishes that goal. So I'd ask the council to consider that act of adding those couple of words.
For selectmen.
I have no
issue with that. All right. All right, Jason. Where do you want it? First.
First paragraph of the Monroe Town Hall to present,
Hold on. To, all right, present.
discuss,
Yep.
and consider an act upon each of the following.
And
Simply adding present, comma, discuss, comma, and.
Yes.
all right.
Sorry, 3 words.
I withdraw my motion. I move the town council adopt resolution 23-121 with the following language added. Resolved that pursuant to chapter 9, section 1 of the charter of the town of Monroe and contingent upon Board of Finance approval, the town council hereby calls a town meeting to be warned and held on October 23rd, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the Monroe Town Council chambers of the Monroe Town Hall to present, discuss, and to consider an act upon each of the following entitled resolutions individually, and that the town clerk cause notice of such meeting to be posted and published in accordance with law. Number 1, resolution authorizing appropriation of $1,020,000 for a road construction and reconstruction Phase 10 project and authorizing the issuance of the town general obligation bonds an amount not to exceed $1,020,000 to finance the appropriation. Number 2, resolution authorizing appropriation of $900,000 for various school facility improvements and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $900,000 to finance the appropriation. Number 3, resolution authorizing the appropriation of $1,030,000 for the purchase of trucks and equipment for the Department of Public Works and authorizing the issuance of the town's general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,030,000 to finance the appropriation. Number 4, resolution authorizing the purchase of real estate for town purposes and a special appropriation of $3 million from unassigned fund balance for the purpose of acquisition of real estate and for Phase 1 and Phase 2 facility renovations for a community center. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair LaPellis. Any other discussion?
Only that I ask our wonderful reporter to go through, I think there were a couple of words off from what would, and within the resolution authorizings, to just make sure that they match what was in that those sections match what was in the agenda, in the packet, rather than what was specifically stated.
All right. Any other
Thank you.
discussion? Okay, and all those in favor of adopting resolution 23-121 as amended, please say aye.
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 All those against, please say nay. Hearing no nays, passes 8-0. Second. All right, there are no matters of unfinished business. There are no unfinished matters of new business. There is no second public participation this evening. I am adjourning this meeting at 7:59 p.m.